Okay.
Oh.
Sit at the table. I have two decades.
Yeah, we got just about perfect minutes.
Except for Patsy.
Patsy, Gary's here now. Carmen's the only one that we don't know about.
She's coming,
Is she?
yeah.
Okay.
And I saw,
Patsy said she could not, yeah.
Patsy said she was gonna be in Raleigh today.
right.
But she told us that.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Oh,
Here's
no.
Carmen.
Set at 70 feet. Go ahead.
I don't need it.
Let me call the meeting to order here. Thank you everyone for coming. I want you to look at this. Every little pink check mark is a board member who attended the meeting today. I want you to see that. It's almost perfect attendance. I'm impressed. Thank you very much. We needed a good crowd today, and we got it. I'm just getting on the front page of the newspaper first attendance, I think. Let's go through some things. Now, we've got a couple more people yet to come, but we can work through some of the things that are more routine until we get everybody here. Let's start with welcome and introductions. We like to keep track of who's come to the meeting so we know who it is that's been here and interested in the program. So I'd like to go around the boardroom first, board table first, and just introduce yourself and what your capacity is at Pack Place. And then let's go around the room on the outside, just who you are and what your connection is to Pack Place. I'm Edward Hay, Gary Board of Directors.
Glenda Field, I'm on the board of directors.
Seth Woodall, the rep for the Culver Museum.
Vicki Ballard, Executive Director of the Culver Science Museum.
David Worley, representative from the 9/11, was almost sit there.
I'm Richard Ford, I represent the YMI on the board.
Mark Hunt, City of Asheville, appointed you to the board.
Carmen Rollins Kennedy, a fairly new board member coming into the hornet's nest.
Pam Myers, Executive Director of the Asheville Art Museum.
Lynn Andrews, I'm a representative from the Art Museum.
Tina McGuire, Vice Chair of the Board. Carol Peterson, appointed by Buckingham to the board.
Terry Warner, member of our.
Michael Andrew, member at large and treasurer.
Heather Nelson, business manager for Pack Place.
Okay. Mary?
Mary Robinson, attorney for Pack Place.
Okay.
John North, editor of the Asheville Daily Newspaper.
Barry Jackson, City.
Nancy Ferguson, representing the Art Museum.
Fred Barber, attorney for the city.
David McLeese, board member, Asheville Art Museum.
Roger McCready, Asheville Tribune.
Tiffany Santiago, operations manager at the Diana Whitten Theater.
Tom Morrissey, board member, Culver Earth Science Museum.
Susie Morrissey, board member of Coburn Earth Science Museum.
John Newman, board chair of the Culver.
And Dora Nelson, board member of Culver. Sarah Peacock, board member of Culver.
Ken Michael up, citizen, City of Bay.
John Mile, taxpayer.
Bill Payne, just dish passing observer.
Tom Chalmers, director of visitor services for Pack Place.
And Dave Brown, board member. We do have everybody here, so let's go straight to the issue at hand. I circulated a memo saying that today was the day that we need to take action on the formal request by Pack Place to renew its lease with the city. Before we get too far along, let me just ask Mary Robinson, who's an attorney, I asked her to put together just a very short description of what the variables are here, what we're talking about. So if you could do that, Mary.
Just with respect to the lease itself.
Yeah, the lease and the renewal and how that works.
Okay, so according to the current lease agreement, which expires on May 31st of this year, it was a 10-year lease term. I think this was the third lease. The first lease started in 1988. And basically, each lease has said that within 30 days, or within more than 30 days prior to the expiration of the lease, that Pack Place has a right to request a renewal lease, a subsequent lease, under the same terms as the current lease. And this has been what's been exercised the past several times since 1988. I think basically with a few tweaks that the city and Pack Place have agreed upon in the past from lease to lease. It's not been an identical lease each time, but that's the wording in the current lease is that Pack Place has this right to offer to renew. And the window for exercising that closes 30 days from the expiration of the current lease. So under the terms of the current lease, that right expires, I think, April 30th, or, depending on how you count the days, May 1. I've been treating it as April 30th, but it might actually be May 1. We're just making it clean. We don't want to run up until the actual deadline, obviously, if Pack Place decides to renew its current lease. Now, obviously, what people have been discussing is something new, something different, whereby the art museum would be a direct lessee of the city of Asheville for its portion of the space. So obviously we haven't brought this up before. Pack Place hasn't previously voted to renew the current lease. But that is, basically you do have to come to a decision before you hit the 30-day window of whether or not you're going to vote to renew the current lease agreement. Now, that isn't, what happens if you offer to renew is you're then sending this offer to the city, and the city either accepts or rejects that offer to renew. If the city rejects that offer to renew, then according to the current terms, that is considered a city termination of the lease, and that kicks in a certain set of provisions. If the city accepts the offer to renew, then you go forward with a lease that is identical to your current lease.
What about the compensation piece?
Well, I mean, that's part of it, is the compensation of Pack Place is only in the event of a city termination of the lease. So if you do not renew the current lease, if you do not ask the city for an extension of the current lease, then unless you go into a new lease or someone goes into a new lease with that reimbursement right protected, it goes away as of May 31st. So that's one of the reasons why we're bringing it up now, is it needs to be dealt with going forward. If the city does not accept a Pack Place right of renewal, that triggers the compensation clause according to the terms of the current lease. So, obviously we all know about various letters that have gone back and forth between the city and Pack Place, and that would all come into play in the event. But if you don't decide what to do before 30 days in advance of the lease termination, then yes, that right definitely gets tossed out.
Yeah.
Just a question. When the Pack Place Board voted to support the concept of a direct lease for the art museum, how does that affect asking for the lease to be renewed exactly as is? Because they're contradictory.
I don't think that it's contradictory with the understanding that the purpose of asking for a renewed lease is not to foreclose continued negotiations. The issue that we're running into is if the current lease expires May 31 and there aren't new leases in place as of May 31, then everybody's out, because then there is no lease. So either new leases have to be entered between now and May 31, or the current lease has to be renewed, one or the other. And the option B of renewing the current lease expires as of April 30th or so.
I think it is inherent in that notion that, adopting the concept of, that Pac Place would also agree then to modify and amend its lease to accommodate that change in the circumstances.
Okay, that hasn't been expressed up until now.
Well, I think at the time, a year ago plus, the idea that the city was not going to renew the lease was not something that anybody thought or talked about. It just never occurred to us that that would happen. And so we've always been within the context of, okay, we'll just amend the Pac Place lease to take it into account whatever the art museum change.
Mary, I think maybe in response to that question, it might be helpful. First of all, you can correct me, but my understanding is Pac Place owns the building, the city owns the land
And that's all pursuant to the terms of the current lease.
under the lease.
Right,
So even if we weren't facing a May 31st deadline, the city does not have the power to contract a direct lease directly with the art museum. They can propose a direct lease, but this board has to approve that and grant that. Is that correct?
On the condition that the current lease is still in effect or a successor lease under the same
Right.
terms is in effect. Generally speaking, you don't have this sort of unusual division of property ownership where one party owns the land, the other party owns the building. That's a term of the lease. It's in the actual lease agreement itself that the city and Pac Place have agreed that during this lease, Pac Place owns the building and the city owns the land. So if the lease is terminated and not renewed,
Right.
that clause no longer exists. If Pac Place fails to renew its current lease and no new lease takes effect to replace it,
And the city does have the right.
then the city owns the whole building, basically effective June 1.
And that's where the compensation issue comes in, because the lease contemplates that if the city refuses to do it and without justification, then it will reimburse Pac Place the value of the buildings that is basically taking, away from Pac Place.
Correct.
And sort of going back around with this idea of what would it mean to vote to renew the current lease versus not voting to renew the current lease in light of the continued negotiations. If if Pac Place sends the city a notice, we're offering to renew under the same terms as our current lease, to that provision of the lease that gives us the right to lease. It's my understanding, just based on facts and circumstances right now, the city is not going to turn around and say, okay, we accept that offer. Odds are the city is not going to respond to that, at least not in the near future. That doesn't actually change anything until May 31. Until May 31, Pac Place is still a tenant according to the 2004 lease. So up through May 31, as long as everybody, including Pac Place, works something out that is agreeable to all parties, then effective June 1, whatever works. Whatever everybody agrees to would be what will do. And if that's a continued lease under the current terms, or if that's a totally different system, same basic case, that it's not that voting at this point to send an offer to renew the lease necessarily means that a new lease will be entered. It's not an option exactly that you're exercising. It is an offer that you are sent.
Okay, any other questions for Mary?
Yeah, before we move on, I'd like to offer a clarifying observation. It's frequently said that Pac Place Inc. owns the building and the city owns the land. And a careful reading of the lease agreement lays out, and you actually have to go back to the original lease agreement, lays out that the improvements in legal terms, improvements are anything on top of the land that are built. The city contributed the Pac Place Memorial Library into the project and $3 million in taxpayer originated funding. And so the relative values of investment by the city of Asheville and all other parties, there's a ratio that is developed there. And the ownership interest in the improvements are divided in that way. And so it ultimately is kind of an undivided interest the city has part, and Mary's nodding, so this is, so.
It's a $3 million, $5.28 million situation.
A little
And yeah,
more.
that building isn't included when I talk about the building. The Pack Place Memorial Library existed previously, so it's not part exactly. And if you look at the tax cards, they're sort of divided.
Well, so part of my point here is this thing, every time you sort of peel back a layer, it gets more and more complicated. It's oversimplifying to say that Pack Place Inc. owns the building and the city owns the land. It's more complicated and it's a divided interest. Part of what we run into occasionally here is that people say things publicly, they go away with mistaken impressions that then guide their view of this. And I know this is not the biggest thing that people are concerned about, but it's important to not get confused. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mary? Okay, well, within that context, I circulated a memo, as I said, that said that we'd be voting today on whether to request renewal of the lease. Earlier today, Mary and I met with Mark and Gary Jackson and Fred Barber and discussed a proposal by them that while we're working on everything, that we extend the period of time of the existing lease by 60 days from June 30, from May 31 to July 31, if that's 60 days. Give us more time to get some work done on trying to get this thing sorted out between ourselves. Mary and I talked about it, we talked with the group about it. One of our concerns was that, no action be taken which would diminish our right to demand whatever it is we're entitled to, if the lease isn't renewed. And we're satisfied that the proposal addresses that. Mary, would you tell them exactly what it is we'd be voting on?
Right, basically under paragraph 2 of the current lease agreement, the term of this lease shall begin on the first day of July 2004, shall end at 12 p.m. midnight on the 31st day of May 2014. In the event lessee holds over after such stated term, yada, yada, yada. So this would be an amendment of that specific term so that the end date, instead of 12 p.m. midnight on the 31st day of May 2014, would be 12 p.m. midnight on the 31st day of July 2014. What that would also change then is under paragraph 14, lessee offer to renew. Lessee offer to renew shall mean a written notice given by lessee to lessor not more than 6 months and not less than 30 days before the expiration of the then current stated term of this lease agreement. So the current stated term of this lease agreement would change to expire on the 31st day of July instead of the 31st day of May. So that would mean that the right to offer to renew would be pushed out also an additional 60 days. So that instead of expiring end of April, beginning of May, it would expire at the end of June.
Thank you.
So
I'm sorry.
gives you another 60 days to wrap everything up.
Now, I'm speaking just for myself on this, but I think an additional 60 days may give us some time to sort some things out, and I don't see if there's any downside to it, so that's my opinion.
Well, if this board votes to take that direction, then what happens? Does the city have to then approve it as well, since they...
Let me speak to that. And can I touch on the points that...
Sure.
The city council has authorized the city manager to execute exactly what Mary just described. So after this board votes, it sounds like you've drafted it up, it could be signed.
No, it's
not.
not.
So, Mark, you all talked about that Tuesday. I mean, you all have already approved what they're talking about.
Yes, ma'am, in closed session last night, city council, there are really three things to address. One is 60-day extension. The second is that going forward under whatever is resolved relative to leases that might take effect on August 1st, that no rent, no capital maintenance fees, no fees to the city would be required earlier than January 1st, 2015.
Correct.
And And then between now and the end of that 60-day extension, nobody would be like evicted from the building. I mean, you know, the people say, gee, is the city out here trying to push people out on the streets tomorrow or next week? And that is not at all. The mayor met with this board, it's been about 6 weeks ago now, and reiterated the city's commitment to good faith negotiations with all parties involved. And the principles she laid out that day are still in effect, and we're working every day. Gary, Fred, others on the staff are working every day to try to get toward a productive resolution to all this. So that's what the 60 days is about.
May I ask another question? I hate to use this term, but is this kicking the can down the road? And how does that affect what the Colburn folks have said they plan to do and what the actual
I'll add to others can respond. Here, this is legitimately, there is a lot of work going on. Legitimately, the city thinks that a better outcome and more settled resolution can occur. That this is not, the city has not, I mean, I've been on this board almost 2.5 years, and we have never been eager to push the time frame out. And we, as you know, we've been very insistent that this is not rocket science, that we can figure this out in a reasonable time frame. And so we've been rigorously pushing to resolve outstanding questions about May 31st. You know, having put all the effort we have in that, we think that the next 2 months is important. And so the no rent, no capital maintenance, no charges initiative, Colburn has asked for an extension of their term, of their lease to December 31st, 2014. So the step we took to waive any kind of rent or charges is in direct response to a request by the Colburn.
And I agree with you. I think there's been great cooperation with the city and the county too, I might say, as far as the amount of funds they put into the operation. So I just wanted to know if there was anything that either one of these two entities needed to put on the table that affects their plans. I did read that you all were looking toward the end of the year.
Right.
And I see your whole board back there, so I'm just saying, I'm saying.
No, that's not my whole board, that's just
half of the big board.
Our decision was made in response to this deadline that we were looking at, and so we do not have all the details in place of what we want to do. And I think we're still in a position of working with the city and figuring out the best way to ensure that the museum is still able to serve the community. And that's our goal always, is to continue to serve those people. So this is the first that I was aware of the 60-day extension. I think it would be a good thing for us, and certainly allows more time for discussion and resolution.
Well, that's exactly what I meant.
Dave.
And I guess I'd like to raise the question with you and perhaps with Mary. Why wouldn't it be wise for us to pass a motion that would confirm our intent to request a renewal of the lease, and then attach to that authorization to you or to the executive committee to approve an extension, thereby making sure that we are affirming as a board no change in the status quo, so to speak, rather than leaving all of this sort of unspoken and indefinite. And as I read the history of this venture, it's the leaving things indefinite that can cause a lot of problems. And I think that we are definitely desiring to, at least I am, to renewing the lease. But if there are better solutions that can be found in 60 days that will meet all parties' desires, that would be even better.
Any reason why we couldn't do it that way from our side?
And I think it's just still part of an ongoing negotiation, but yes, I mean, in any case, I would say that you do need to take action to make sure that there is a lease going forward. And, giving you the 60-day extension more or less just means that you don't have to act for an additional 60 days. It doesn't stop you from acting in a conditional way or what have you, and just as long as you're all comfortable with how it is that you're moving forward and what it is that you are planning to pursue. The understanding being, in this case, I think that you would continue to have the other partners negotiating and discussing how they want to move forward.
Lynn?
Yeah, I was just saying, I was just, want some reflection in such a motion as Dave has proposed. To say that the board supports asking for renewal of the lease is in contradiction to the board's vote to support the concept of a direct lease for the art museum. And that's a significant, I just think it's a significant move. We worked very hard to come up with wording for the board so that we could have the support of the Pack Place board for a direct lease for the art museum. And I would not want to see us take a step that would negate that action that we took. I would like, if it's 60 days and we think we can come to a resolution with the city on a 60-day basis, I can understand that, but I think they're two separate issues. The 60-day extension and asking for the renewal, I think they're two separate issues.
Yeah, let me add, in the council discussion last night, we talked about the proposal that this board would vote today to request, that might vote today to request a renewal of the lease on its exact terms now. City council views that as a policy position, that would be a policy position of the Pack Place board, that we want to go forward for 10 more years under the status quo. It was in the context of this board not passing that motion that Dave just suggested, that we're agreeing to extend 60 days. So there's nothing, Dave, there's nothing that prevents this board from voting before that 30-day deadline to request the extension of the lease, as you're suggesting today. I don't see any advantage to doing it today. It would contradict the city council action last night. Gary would not be authorized to extend the currently 60 days if this board passes the suggestion you just made.
I'm concerned that we not give up the right that we currently have for this extension, or in any implicit way give up that right by moving forward without an affirmation of our intent to request renewal. So I can see that there could be some concerns there. I'm not a lawyer.
Well, when Brett and Gary and I discussed this with Ed and Mary, Mary, I think I heard you say that exactly the suggestion Ed made does not preclude the kind of request Dave wants to make sure this board has the opportunity to do, and that the deadline to achieve that under this new case would be no later than June 30th.
Right,
Or
and
July
that's
1st.
why in particular, looking at it as an amendment to the current lease, to change the end date of the current lease. So in all other respects, every term of the current lease would continue for an additional 60 days. And that includes the fact that there is this renewal, right to offer to renew is exercisable at any time until you hit the 30 days out from termination date. So if the termination date moves, so does the renewal period. And specifically, if if the city's resolution to extend is contingent upon this board not voting to renew today, well, then from a legal perspective, your options are either to vote to renew today or to vote to amend the current lease to have another 60 days.
Is that a part of the is that a private part of the motion that occurred last night, that this is contingent upon this vote? The city's offer to extend 60 days, is that a formal part of the motion passed last night?
Fred and Gary were there. It was distinctly the policy direction of city council. I think the vote was.
Well, this is arisen in the motion.
I don't. It was late.
Okay.
I don't remember. I couldn't tell you a single phrase out of the motion, much less.
Well, it appears that there's.
I think the way you stated it is correct, that the initiative was given conditioned on this being an alternative to the board considering the motion that had been on the table.
Right. And I'll just add that, Fred said it well when we were speaking earlier with Harry and Ed. It's not this, the city has no interest in smoke and mirrors way to gain any leverage. This is a pure 60-day extension of exactly where we are now. We're not trying to change anything about either side's negotiating position or options or legal remedies or legal opportunities. I mean, it's just that. It's an opportunity to have more time to work, and that time is needed.
A couple of thoughts. If I can be more detailed than just the specific comments on the table, but first of all, as a fiduciary serving as a board member of Pack Place, I think it is important to act as a fiduciary for Pack Place, even though I've got a day job and everything else. I think most of the people on the board are doing everything they can to support all the different organizations that are within the umbrella of Pack Place, and are not trying to disadvantage one or the other. And I think that's a very challenging and difficult balancing act, given what all the different organizations want to do. As Pam and most people here know well, my firm has given money to the Art Museum. I'm a big supporter of what they're trying to do, but I want to make sure it's done in a coordinated and organized fashion, and that it all kind of gets moving forward in a way that's not detrimental to the other organizations. I do agree that there's a tremendous amount of work going on behind the scenes in terms of getting leases negotiated and talked about. It is interesting that, I think everyone is very clear on the Art Museum's desire to move forward with a direct lease. What I'm hearing from the two other organizations in the specific building is that they would actually prefer to be under the Pack Place umbrella, and I think that's still part of what's going on in terms of negotiations. I think the Colburn's letter of a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, was very interesting, and my understanding, it's not the Colburn's first choice to leave Pack Place and move out. My understanding is they're trying to figure out a way to survive long term, given the complex nature of all the different moving parts.
That is accurate. That is completely accurate.
And so having said all that, trying to figure out what is best for the broader community is what I believe I'm putting foremost in my mind. Trying to act as a fiduciary for Pack Place is what I'm putting very close to foremost in my mind. I'm trying to help all the organizations achieve their goals, because I think all these organizations have been very important to the development of downtown and to enhancing the community that we all live in. And that's a long-winded way of kind of coming back around to what David just said about what's the best thing for Pack Place to do relative to all of this. What we do today can be undone next month. If leases are agreed upon, we can undo it 2 months from now, 3 months from now. A little bit of what I'm concerned about in terms of just a 60-day extension versus asking for the formal renewal and then backing out of that 60 days from now or 120 days from now, is that Now, I start thinking of what my schedule is gonna look like in June with my kids on summer vacation. There's a reasonable chance that I might not be around in June, which would be a critical board meeting at that moment if things hadn't been renewed. So to me, there's a question of we have the solid forum, very good board participation today. It's likely to be good in May. When you get into June and July, lots of vacations begin to occur, lots of people are moving in different places, and it might be hard to get everyone together to then have another proactive action in June if we need to extend things for a bit of time.
I think that's a good point, and I'm concerned about that too.
So that's maybe a long-winded way of saying, not because I think, Lynn, it's at all against the art museum, although y'all might interpret it that way, but I view it as for Pack Place to then support all the organizations going forward in their efforts. And I very much want to see the art museum succeed in what they're doing, and I want to make sure that Pack Place can do everything it can to help that happen. But at the same time, I think as a board member of Pack Place, I need to look after Pack Place also.
I understand your position. As you know, we have donors who have been waiting for us to say that a direct lease has been completed. We have been assured by the city that by the end of the expiration date of the current Pack Place lease, we would have a direct lease in place. For the Pack Place board to vote to ask the city for an extension of the lease as is, which has a 10-year date, 10-year timeline attached to it, would in effect stop our expansion in its tracks until it was resolved. And this is going to be a signal to our donors that Pack Place has every reason to go ahead and ask for the lease to be renewed, and that's a very, very serious problem for us. If it can be, if the leases can really be completed in 60 days, and we have another 60 days before this decision needs to be made about the asking for the renewal of the lease as is, I would ask the board members to consider separating the two issues and voting to approve the city's 60 days. Barbara?
Yeah, but didn't Bob Us craft a paragraph that would resolve the donor issue in the present lease?
No, in the present lease. There's been no changes made to the present lease.
As I recall, about a year ago, my host was attending the meeting, and this issue of donors came up. Bob advised that a paragraph could be added to the existing city lease that could satisfy any donor. That was said in an open meeting of this board in May or June of last year.
No work has gone forward on that at all, and I guess I
No
would have
work may
to.
have gone forward, but that was a correct quote from Bob Oates, that a paragraph could be prepared and inserted in the existing lease between the city and Pack Place.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. We need to limit it to board members.
And I would just say that our attorneys have not indicated that such a paragraph would be acceptable to meet the terms of the contracts we currently have.
I agree with Michael that we've got an issue with board vote. I was concerned about it today, and it was not a problem. But I think having 10 people here in June may be unrealistic. And I wonder if it's not possible for us to vote on the extension and also vote, and I don't know how to say it exactly, but that says board in its full membership favors the request for renewal at the appropriate time and authorizes the executive committee or the president or whatever we want to say to exercise that at the time of the board meeting in June if we don't have a full house of people. at that point in time, you know, we're gonna know one way or another whether we're gonna have to exercise it or not.
And I'd like to ask Fred to comment on whether he thinks that violates, or not violates, but negates what the city resolution last night was.
Probably does.
Well, it does.
Ed, so you just don't want us voting on that today at all. That's why we're talking about a 60-day extension.
It's what city council decided, it's not what I want today. It's what we discussed last night, what we decided last night, and sticking with policies.
My understanding of what our request to renew the lease, the only thing Pack Place can do is a formal request to renew as is. And that then opens up the negotiation to say, okay, you've requested as is, but let's negotiate what the real lease is going to be. But the action of requesting the renewal as is protects us board members from a fiduciary standpoint. And then what the ultimate lease is what's ultimately negotiated. I mean, that's, then again, there.
But on the other hand, if city council has clearly stipulated that action is in contradiction to their extension that's on the table,
Well, I guess.
then do we not have a responsibility? In that case, then I let that opportunity slip away.
That is the question. Do you have a copy of the city's resolution from last night?
No, there was not a resolution. This was a
There was a vote.
It was a lawyer-client discussion.
This was a lawyer-client advice in closed session, but the city manager was given authority pursuant to the discussion that followed. This was not in open session, not by formal resolution.
Seems to me that we need to proceed in a legal way.
We would be if we extended it to 60 days. I don't see anything gained by David's motion or motion.
Well, we have an issue. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I would like some concrete things that are gonna happen in this 60 days.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand all I mean, it seems pretty clear to me, a 60-day extension just gives everybody a little bit more time to deal with the loose ends. And I'm trying to understand, is this something we do want to, I mean, is that something that's good? Is that something that's bad? It sounds like Lynn thinks it's bad, but it's not a good idea. I'm hearing other people, and looking at other people's faces thinking that they do, they're shaking their heads. You look at people's body language. So I'm having a hard time. Do we have all the pieces of this puzzle? And
let me say also, I think this is a great effort on the city's part. I mean, I really do. I think they have put themselves out to say, let's get our duck. I know you all hate to get our ducks in a row and all those kind of things they're saying, but I think it's their great effort to say, let's get this act together. We're here to help, and we're here to keep this entity here as the driving force that it's been in downtown. So my question is, tell me in 60 days what's going to happen and how people are going to move forward, and it's going to be a good thing. I mean, I'm with Michael 100%. We're here, we're Pack Place board members.
Yes.
Absolutely. Been on the other board,
Well, and
but we're Pack Place board members.
And just to address that,
And
there
may
was
I also say, I was surprised to hear that when your window is down there, you're not rocket jumping. Mark's we all have no windows, and I'm real concerned about that.
Yeah, we have no windows.
But if you get a window, are you gonna stay? I mean,
Well-
I'm surprised. And another thing, your fine chairman said, we're here to do good work, and all of a sudden we're having to work with politicians. And that just put a knife in my heart. I mean, politicians are what's gonna make this all go forward. So if you get a window and no politicians are gonna say.
Let me just, a
It was
couple
a
of
30-minute interview, too.
I know, he thought,
Yeah.
but I thought, I hate this man.
Of course he chose that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we said other things that we would have preferred to see in print. You are Pack Place board members,
Right.
and
And I
Pack
take
Place
that
has
very
been
seriously.
an amazing organization for downtown. You know, I'm a native. Pack Place changed downtown, and I just want to say from the Colburn standpoint, and I have board members who will let me know if I'm speaking out of turn. This board needs to do what is best for Pack Place. Pack Place has been a tremendous supporter of the Colburn, and whatever your decision is today, we will be able to work with that in whatever way that is necessary. As far as leaving downtown, you know, the city's decision to declare Pack Place in default and require direct leases really changed everything for us, and it happened really suddenly. We weren't expecting that. A real short time period from when we got our lease on March 7th until having to come up with a decision. So we are very, this is one of those words that's like kick the can. We're very fluid with what we're doing right now. But I just want to express absolutely how dedicated we are to science literacy and science education in this community. And that's what we want to be concentrating on, is our programming, the people that we serve. And, you know, I've said this in lots of meetings. And we're a nonprofit corporation. We're supported by the city and the county and the state. And that means that our shareholders are the people who live here. And those are the people we want to serve. If we could find a way to do that within Pack Place, then certainly this has been a great home for us. But our overriding mission is to make sure that the Colburn survives and thrives, and we continue to provide service. So, thank you.
One of the questions I have related to your question, Carol, and maybe the three organizations and YMI, so if you want to add it also, but given that so leases as of today would need to be completed by the end of May, with a 60-day extension would need to be completed by the end of July. On kind of a probability scale, 1 to 100, do you think the chances are 90% that your lease negotiations will be completed by the end of July? Do you think they're 10%? I mean, what does the 60 days give us some concrete answer to the challenge?
For us, absolutely. We're prepared to make the earlier deadline.
Okay.
John?
I've not had a chance to talk to David, I've been out of town, but to Carol, to your question for us, we've been debating over the vehicle. Is it through Pack Place? Is it a direct lease? It's gone back and forth. And we've begun the discussions now. 60 days would be very valuable to us in terms to get things done, yes. To Michael, to your question?
You're not going to give us a probability?
Haven't figured out how far apart we are yet.
I'll add, I think it's somewhat difficult. I mean, the only context we have in lease negotiations is the art museum, who's taken now a year.
Excuse me, I'd like to separate that, David. We got the lease on the same day you got it.
But your
March
discussions
7th.
your discussion started with Bob Ost in whatever, March or April of last year.
But
correct?
everything changed and started again with.
So our discussions have started with Fred Barber only 30 days ago?
Well, ours started with Fred Barber on March 7th, and we got a copy of the lease.
Well, I disagree, Pam, but, I think it's maybe fancy words or semantics. I mean, you've been talking between your attorney and the city's attorney.
This is a very
or
different
attorneys for a long time.
But the Pack Place.
My point is, it's not to get into how long the art museum is taking for the lease. I just alluded to the fact that I think personally it's been a long time. Enough said about that. The problem is, there are a lot of issues to be negotiated. We're not even quite sure how comfortable in direct lease or Pack Place lease There's a lot of questions to be answered, and it's a little difficult to say how quickly those can all be resolved. That's the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, let me just respond to Carol from the city. It is for the reasons that Vicki and David just described, the need, they both seem very eager for more time to work through this, and that it's in direct response to those partner needs that the city is recommending the 60-day extension. And just to reiterate what the mayor said here 6 weeks ago, the city is very intent on seeing duty relative to capital maintenance funding. We're unwavering on that. Regarding these direct leases, the notion of direct leases to each of the entities, that was an effort by the city to be able to move forward to an effective renewal on May 31st so that there would be a functional governance property management model going forward that also addressed the capital maintenance funding needs. She said that there were concerns expressed that day. Esther said very clearly, the city is open to counter proposals and negotiation. We want to make sure that this is something functional that comes out. And if that means Pack Place continuing to play some sort of role, perhaps subletting or whatever else, we're open to that, and we remain open. Nothing has changed about the city's stance, since the mayor laid that out. And so and again, we're busy every week, every day, it seems like, working through this in good faith, I believe. And so that's kind of what we've been up to, what we're gonna be up to, and I just want to make sure I was responsive. Thank you.
Mark, I'm sorry, David, you can go ahead.
Well, given the explanations that have been given today, I'm comfortable advancing two motions in sequence, understanding that the second may not pass. I think it will. The first motion that I would articulate would be to essentially accept the city proposal for a 60-day extension. The second motion would be to authorize our president, or whatever your title is, Ted, to request an extension of the existing lease if a suitable quorum of the board cannot be achieved in a timely way. A renewal of the lease, taking care of Michael's point. And it would seem to me that by separating those two motions, we would have a clean motion. Rather than putting both those thoughts in one motion, we would have a clean motion that would go along with an affirmation of the city's goodwill intent. And at the same time, we would not put our board into a fiscally irresponsible position of not being able to act to preserve our rights.
It seems very sensible to me. I think that for the 60 days, we can put it to good use. There are a couple of things that need to go. One is, the more we know about the Colburn's plans, the better job we do of crafting the new leases and so forth. The other is that we need to communicate with the county about the funding issues and get some input from them on how they would like to see all this work out, especially as we start narrowing the issues. So this will be time well spent. I'm all for that. I am a little put off by the city's reluctance to see us exercise our right to renew the lease, and I feel very uncomfortable with that. I'm with Michael in that, as I said before, if we're setting ourselves up for failure to exercise the lease by taking this action, then I don't feel good about that. I wish the city didn't put me off.
Question for Mark: has the city officially withdrawn the default action last night?
No.
Or is that still on the table?
It is exactly where it was the day we sent the letter. It is not withdrawn. And nor is Pack Place's response that Pack Place is not in default. So I mean, what we discussed very clearly with Ed and Mary earlier is that we're in heading toward this board action that we're leaving the status of things exactly as they are. We're moving the deadlines 60 days down. It's a very simple suggestion.
So if we vote on this today in favor of what the city stated last night, would you propose that if all action be removed?
No. It's not what the city carefully established the policy, weeks ago, issued that letter. The city's reasons for doing that have not changed. But Seth, I want to emphasize, the city is not eager to see this go to litigation. We're not eager to evict anybody. We want a favorable resolution. It's exactly the reason that we suggested the 60-day extension. We view that we're in a period of what have been productive, constructive suggestions, and we want to keep that going. So I personally don't see how lifting this letter, changes that.
We asked her to do the same thing in our meeting this morning and didn't get any further with them than we just did.
Just an observation. I think you alluded to the turmoil that the city's letter caused, and I think that's an accurate statement. I view it more in terms of financial turmoil, and my observation would be that the 60-day renewal may be a good thing, because July 1st we'll know whether there's county funding or not. Now, from Diana Wortham's point of view, we're already being faced with the city's demand that we fund capital improvements, which puts a dent in anybody's budget, but the loss of county funding would be disastrous for Diana Wortham. And I think that may be a good thing, that at least we would have some clue right around July 1st. We may make it really tight on the 30 days that Mary's talked about. But at least we would know what the county's response is, because so far there's been just speculation all over the place as to whether that funding will be there or not be there.
Mark, what would the city's response be if we voted to renew the lease today and not take the extension?
What would our response be? We would continue to work to try to resolve things between now and May 31st, but you've got two occupants of the building that are begging you, Terry, for 60 extra days. So I
agree with that. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say begging. I'm not begging. You've never seen me
Okay.
beg.
You're not begging. They're asking politely.
I'm asking.
I wouldn't say begging either. I think it may be a good thing, given that there's a lot of negotiations to take place and there's a limited amount of time to do it in, but we're not.
Well, we have them, well, why don't we put the motion on the table, motion number 1, which is the simple one that we agree to the proposed 60-day extension on the terms stated here in this building. And we can approve that now. That's the city's proposal, and we'll agree to that. That's the motion, right? Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, all right. Let's have discussion on that motion.
That one's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like I said, all the organizations within that place seem to want it, so I think it's easy.
Okay, good.
And I would just offer that if the second motion that Dave describes he'll make is approved by this board by a 2/3 majority, then by at least 10 votes, then the first motion is invalid. The city's view is that the policy position on related to the first motion is not effective. We would not sign this 60-day extension if the second motion is approved. So I just want to make sure people understand that. And I will just say again, I'm not sure what the upside to doing it now versus 60 days from now is. I understand people may be on vacation. I would point out that people can dial in by phone and vote. I understand there's some inconvenience to that, but believe me, there are a lot of people going through a lot of inconvenience to try to work this out.
to agree with what Mark said. I'm not sure that it makes any difference whether we vote on that second motion today or bring it up again and after the second 60 days is up.
Yeah, and I would think as I hear the discussion and hear the interpretation that the city's giving, given my general conviction that the Pack Place Board is here to maximize the collaboration and the extension of family opportunities in science, to have science education and to have coordination of the arts. I think that if the improbability of not being able to achieve a quorum is not sufficiently high, that it requires the second motion.
I will say, just on that thought, it does require 10, it's a 2/3 vote.
10 in the room or 10 voted?
10 in the room. 10 voted.
10 affirmative votes.
Yeah.
And Mary had said earlier that, you know, somebody calling in for the purpose of that vote is acceptable under the bylaws.
Well, if we're as fiduciarily responsible as you say, we're gonna make a point to be here and vote. It's too important. Vote.
And I would just point out that it isn't just the bylaws. North Carolina does have pretty strict guidelines for nonprofit compliance. And the next workshop comes soon. Yeah. But right now, phone votes are, and I don't see that changing, but you cannot vote by email or letter or something like this. It would need to be a call in.
Any further discussion on motion number 1? John?
A question for clarification, the Pack Place's attorney is comfortable that this does protect Pack Place's position.
Well, as long as the terms are sort of what we've discussed, that it is amending the current lease to extend the term of the lease, so that all other components of the lease will relate to that new extended termination date as opposed to the current May 31st date.
And that this is an acceptance of an offer from the city for that.
That's the only part that I'm now a little bit confused about, because it sounds like there hasn't actually been a resolution from city council. That there has been some kind of authorization that Gary is able to enter into an amendment that expressly changes the termination date.
That's correct.
And he's nodding.
Your summary is correct.
So I guess that's an offer from the city.
And when would that be confirmed by the city? If this motion passes?
I believe we could have a consent agenda item on April 22nd. I don't know, Fred, I'll check with the city attorney. I don't know that it's necessary for an extension like that to be.
What we authorize is that Gary could sign this 5 minutes from now, and I think that's binding, John. I mean, the city manager's signature on a lease amendment seems pretty binding.
I'm T's and I's at this point, to make sure, I mean, that if the motion passes, that Pack Place would accept your offer, that acceptance is confirmed.
As Mark is confirmed, I'm absolutely clear that I am authorized to sign an extension for 60 days.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on motion number 1? Are we ready to vote? Let's do it with hands so we got proper count. All in favor of Dave's motion for the 60 days, raise your hand. Got it?
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. Dave, you want to be heard on your second motion?
No, I don't.
You're withdrawing your second motion?
I'm withdrawing my second motion.
There is no second motion. Any other issues people want to raise about this? Okay. Well, I will say that I'm counting on everybody, honest to goodness, to do what needs to be done, to make that quorum. It makes me very nervous, because that day comes and goes, and we missed it. And
Do we know what that day is, Heather?
On the calendar.
we need-
June 11th.
June 11th, everyone can put it in their calendar.
Okay? Now, having said all that, I'm sure everything worked out in the meantime, and there'll be no vote because everybody's happy. Okay, well, if we are through with that, I'm inviting more comment if you have it. Okay.
I'm going to have one, just
Okay.
clarification, I'm sorry. The way things stand right now, the city has offered direct lease to Diana Wortham, the actual art museum, to the Culver. Pack Place ceases to exist except that as a sort of shadow board to handle the money that's at the community foundation. And to receive any money that the county might put.
The Pack Place piece will fall into place after the direct leases are negotiated because they will.
There'll be no lease to Pack Place any longer, because Pack Place don't have own any building.
It's not inconceivable that we could come up with a Pack Place lease, but I
Or the
think that's
stairways and the
unlikely.
corridors or something?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I
right.
mean, I'm just saying, the reality, it doesn't make any sense for Pack Place to exist as an entity. All right, that's fine, I just make sure I'm clear that that's what's going on.
We still have a $400,000 endowment to administer.
Yeah, and we have, but, so why would we, if we don't have a Pack Place, why would we manage an endowment for something that doesn't exist?
Well,
I mean, just throw that out as a.
We need to deal with that.
Because the endowment is for Pack Place Center, is it not, Barbara? And Pack Place Center, the building continues to exist.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear exactly what you said.
I'm sorry, I said, isn't the endowment for Pack Place Center, which is the building, and the building continues to exist?
I don't know enough about the endowment. But I'm just trying to get clarity of what's going on.
Well, and some of these things are not clear right now.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
need to get used to that.
Well, you can just say that, I'll be fine.
All right, are we ready to move on? Everybody ready? Good. With great reluctance, I move on to the next item on my agenda, which is board vacancies. Back in January, Dave Brown came to me and said, I'm going to have to get off all my boards. I've taken on too much. I've got some new responsibilities. He said, I do not want it to appear that I'm leaving Pack Place because I'm running away from Pack Place. So I'm telling you in January that April will be my last board meeting. It's now April, unfortunately, and so we've got to honor Dave.
I do apologize, I thought we'd be through all this in April.
We really did in January. He said, surely by April we'll be through. You know? So I'm very sorry to report that this is Dave's last meeting. But Dave has been a wonderful board member. He has been a wonderful executive committee member. We'll miss him more there than any place, I think. So, Dave, thank you very much, Barry.
Thank you.
That creates a vacancy at a time that we don't need any vacancies. Last time we filled vacancies, the next choice in line was Charlie Worley. I think Charlie would be a great addition to the board right now. I've talked to Charlie, he's available and willing to come even after all that's been going on. And so what I'd like to do is to plan to vote on the replacement for Dave at the May meeting. I'm telling you now that I'll be nominating Charlie Worley. If anybody else wants to propose somebody, I think it's fine. We can consider anybody that you want to bring on. Then let me know so we can circulate that in advance, and then we take nominations from the floor at the May meeting. Okay? But that way we'll fill that chair without any delay, and can proceed. Is that process satisfactory with everybody? Okay, good. All right. I can't remember. I've got on the agenda a report regarding CLA funding request. Is that before the last? Isn't that the same thing we did last time?
Because they were supposed to vote yesterday,
Okay.
but they didn't get to that part of the agenda.
Okay. I guess that's why I put it on here, was just to have an update discussion, because how much we know about county funding.
And I think we need to go back and approve the minutes, don't we?
Oh, you're right. Thank you. Thank you. So, we'll move on from CR funding request back up the line to the March minutes. Everybody has received them by email or whatever. Any comments, corrections, additions?
I move that we accept.
Thank you. Is there something? Good, thank you. All in favor of adoption of those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Michael, finance report.
The finance report, we have an income statement and a balance sheet to pass out. Not much, there's really not a whole lot going on in either of them except the normal activities of tax play. The winter, we'll be getting to our higher utility expenses than we did last year, but it doesn't seem to be a significant problem. The revenues aren't tracking where revenues were anticipated to track. Expenses are broadly tracking where expenses are anticipated to track. There has been higher capital repair numbers this month. One of the expense items, if you look at the bottom line, because it shows a negative net income of $58,000, that's more a function of just timing of flows coming in. We have the $58,000 of capital repair in progress, which is the roof. And before it shows the income coming in from the endowment, that's going to cover that expense for the roof. So there's nothing beyond that is really significant. In terms of a projection for year end, there is it looks like we're going to be hitting a balanced budget. I think if we miss it, we might be slightly negative to the tune of a couple $1,000. But beyond that, it appears to be that things are flowing along without any big items or issues.
Thank you.
Mike, I got a question. The line item capital repair reserve shows no progress today. Does that, when you say we will meet budget within a couple $1,000s, are we on track to fund that this year?
So that there's a capital funds to be raised line item in the revenues, which and the budget was the $36,000, and that number is zero right now, and that concept is what would come from the partners, and I'm trying to think, we are not going to fully fund that from quote operations. So that in terms of funding that capital funds to be raised number of $36,000, there probably will need to be some input from the member organization. I don't have a hard number for you on that.
So we could come in between $36,000 below budget to on budget. And I think I hear what you're saying is that we're not sure we're going to get any of the $36,000. I just want to be clear about that because it's part of the ongoing discussion. I just want to make sure it's reflected in the minutes as well.
Well, basically, it's in the budget, the partners make up the deficit at the end of the year, and that contributes to the deficit. And so to the extent that, we haven't fully funded it, then the partners are expected to make up the difference. That was what the budget change that we made at your request last year, to build in some responsibility for, covering the,
and what I hear Michael saying is that we're not sure we're going to ask the partners to make that up.
You said that?
I don't think I'm saying that.
Okay.
If you back out that $36,000, I think the rest of the operations will come in about break even. And then as a board, we need to determine, are we going to go to the partners for a pro rata share of that $36,000? Because that will show up as a negative in the budget.
Anything else for Michael on that? Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. Building committee roof repair. I just put this on for a report here. It's a big
Tell us
project.
how the roof's going. Last time I talked to them, they said it was getting close.
The roof repair is done, most of the roof has been replaced, and we still have to pay them for the rest of their work after they finish some small leaks that cropped up during construction work, because it rained during construction work, but for the most part, the roof is done and the bill is paid.
Well, nice job maintaining our facilities
Right.
here. Making capital improvements as we go, and making sure the building works just fine, protects the museum. Okay, let me skip down just to see, and we'll go back to member reports. Does anybody have any new business? Any new business today? It's the same old business. Well, let's go to member reports. Let's start with Diane Worthing Theater.
I've got him preparing things, I just got back in town, all I can say, we're busy. We got D&B audio in all this week, teetotalers, Pedrito Martinez on Friday, Tiffany, what else is?
Next week we have music video Asheville, a rental event the following week, and then teetotalers next weekend.
And our new neighbor, White Duck Taco, opens on the 17th.
Yay!
Okay, Pam?
Well, and our new neighbor's going to be the Chocolate Lounge. We have several new exhibitions open, that have opened since the last past Pack Place board meeting. I urge all of you to come. It's a great lineup in the museum. The photography of Ralph Burns, a 40-year Asheville resident, photographs from 40 years taken both in Asheville with some previously unprinted and unseen images of downtown Asheville in the 70s are part of the exhibition, as well as Ralph's travels around the world and his long-standing, long-running series of images from Graceland on the anniversary of Elvis's passing. They're dynamite images. The Social Geography self-taught artist show is still up. Pierre Daura, who was a Spanish Catalonian artist who migrated to the mountains, is a beautiful small painting show. Sue Weil and Jose de Betancourt's cyanotypes are also up in the new wing. And then a selection of work by the collector that were purchased by the Collectors Circle for the Art Museum are up on the ground floor. So there's really a lot to see right now. We have a huge number of public programs going on, both adult programs and tons of student programs from our Top Times early in the morning, where we teach young children visual arts, to we have a fabulous piano concert on Sunday that was sold out of the gallery. So really busy, exciting, great time. I think tomorrow is homeschoolers will be in the museum as well. So come by anytime.
Thank you very much. Richard?
He's left.
Oh, did he go? Okay, I was looking for a report from I didn't see him slip out. Why am I? So I'll go to Vicki. Vicki, I saved you for last.
Thank you. Because there's nothing going on at the Golden right now, but we're very busy too. We are, in fact, putting schools on waiting lists for field trips now. We are booked through the end of the school year and have been since sometime in March. So that's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem. We would like to be serving all of those schools. We had some wonderfully generous funding from the Culture and Recreation Authority for expanding our preschool programming. We're working on that. That is programming through the end of this fiscal year. So we have expanded that into 15 additional classrooms in early childhood education centers. So we're very excited about that. It's a great project. Summer camps. So we're planning on being here through the summer, hopefully.
There's one more benefit, by the way, to 60-day extension, I was thinking. It takes you through
It takes us right up to that last week of summer camp. So yeah, that's always good. But summer camps registration is going on. That's great. We started Beer City Science again now that it has stopped snowing, knock on wood. Peter Lower did a program which was wonderful, and if any of you know Peter, he's always a great speaker. May 8th, we are having a fundraising event in Pack Place under the stars. It's an Asheville Affiliates event, and Brushfire Stank Grass is going to be playing. And I'm looking at everyone knows who that is, right? Because they are wonderful. They played at my son's wedding. They are a great band. How about that? Anything?
A lot of local restaurants are there named
Yeah.
food, Catawba beer, be a good event.
And so that's May 8th.
It's a Thursday.
Yeah, it's
6 to
Thursday.
9.
May 8th in Pack Place. Tickets are available. And we have just a few tickets left for those of you who want to support science education for Dearly Departed at Asheville Community Theater on April 17th. And that is a fundraiser for the museum, so call us up and buy a ticket.
All right, thank you. I have nothing else. Does anyone have? Are we through? Well, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Jerry Cowan.